Okay, good afternoon once again. So my talk will really be the concomitant AF surgery and some lessons that we learned after 15 years. I think James and I, we started about the same time in 2001 when we learned from Dr. Housey how to do the surgery. And I think this topic is something that we were interested in for a long time. When we were with Dr. Sheff in the Mayo Clinic, we looked at patients who have mitral valve repair with pre- and post-operative patients who have pre-operative atrial fibrillation, and we compared to those who are in sinus rhythm. And what we found was that patients who have AF less than 3 months, most of them were in actually sinus rhythm, on late follow-up. Whereas patients who have atrial fibrillation of more than 6 months, 80% of them or more will be in atrial fibrillation without any other concomitant procedure. But I think at the time what we noted was that the patients that had AF and those without AF after valve repair, when you look at their survival, there was no difference because there was a big group of patients who have so many other comorbid factors as well, and AF never stood out as something that was important. So what is the size of this problem? I think to look at for patients with concomitant, they need concomitant AF, we look at the patients who were operated at the heart center. I think this was a database that we kept for 10 years from January 1996 to 2005, and we found that about 8.3% of patients that came for heart surgery were in atrial fibrillation. So this is really the group that we are looking at. And when we divided the patients, I think Singapore is a little bit different from Vietnam. Most of our cases were coronary artery bypass surgery cases. We have almost 80% of these patients who had bypass surgery done. And of these patients, about 3.9% of them were in atrial fibrillation. We have about 12% valve cases, but in this group of patients, we found that almost 30% of these patients have atrial fibrillation by the time they come for surgery. So I think when we talk about concomitant surgery, likely most of these are going to be valve related, and most of these are going to be mitral valve related. So when we look at a 30-day mortality for patients who either had or without pre-operative AF, we found that the mortality for patients who had pre-operative AF was a little bit higher, 4.9% compared to 2.3%. But when we did the multivariate analysis, we found that preoperative AF was not an independent factor for surgical mortality. But when we follow them up long term, and with the database that we have, we found that at the end of here we have 12 years. At the end of 12 years, we found that patients who had preoperative AF had actually a higher mortality. I think that was the reason we kind of look into this and see whether by having AF operation, whether that's going to impact the long-term survival of these patients. Okay, so preoperative AF and postoperative AF would also turn out to be independent risk factors after considering all the other comorbid issues. So when we first started the MACE procedure, at that time I think Dr. Wong was my senior colleague who actually went to Dr. Cox to do the Cox-MACE procedure. Unfortunately, because Cox-MACE procedure is so complicated that it never really took off. I think some of the surgeries done were mostly on dogs only, not human. When we came back with the Cox-MACE so-called cut and sew procedure. So I think AF surgery really became more common for the ordinary surgeons and that was really with the introduction of modified masers, or so-called modified using different energy sources. And this systematic review that was done in 2005 showed that actually Quoc's maze using the cut and sew method and the modified masers were not too different. And of course, also there were some data to show that bilateral masers was better than left atrial maze. Now, modified energies mainly of two types. Firstly, you have the so-called gradient energies, whereby the energy is transferred from cell to cell, and that include the cold energy, include microwave, include laser, and of course included RF, either dry or cold. On the other hand, at that time there was a different energy source, a so-called acoustic energy source using HIFU, which is high density focused ultrasound, and it acts a little bit differently from the gradient energies, because the greatest damage is where the what I call the energy source is focused, and so there are less damage on the area whereby the source is not focused, and you find that this is also a possibility of coronary sparing. And the reason I'm talking about this HIFU is that because I think it is not available in the market now. Quite a few things also not now available in the market, and that include the microwave. Laser is no longer available in the market. But of course, cryo is coming back, and the one that has been around probably longest and with the largest numbers will be the radio frequency. And the radio frequency can be irrigated or non-irrigated, and our experience really is with a Medtronic device. Initially we started with a unipolar device, and then subsequently with uni and bipolar devices. I think this is Dr. Halsey's diagram in a way, and we started by doing AF, the right side mostly this way, but I think there is a concern about us being too much on the right side. Initially we amputated both the appendages until we found that there was more effusions, pericardial effusions, and we stopped doing that. So only occlude the left atrial appendage and leave the right atrial appendage alone. And we know that by doing quite a bit on the right side, I think there's always a possibility, a concern about permanent pacemaker implant. And as was pointed out by Dr. Fan, that I think in data is showing that there are almost 20%. But sometimes the surgeons will tell us, oh, I only have 1%, I only have 2%. And that's the reason, because you don't follow the patient up. And a lot of these pacemakers are not put in during the time of surgery, because you usually look at heart blocks. Alright, maybe the rate is a bit slow, patients got asymptomatic, you probably won't get a pacemaker inside. But many of these patients down the road with an extensive right side maze do come in with late requirements for a pacemaker. So at the moment, the right side that I'm doing now is only the isthmus ablation. For the left side, very similar to what I think James do initially. I know James now occlude going to the atrial appendage, and also so what I do is either isolate the pulmonary vein separately with the isthmus line, or with this line across here, or as much as possible I will try to include all four. That means I isolate them. In addition, I try to have a box as well. And this usually is done using the monopolar. And the other thing which I do different, and I think James alluded to before, is I also do the coronary sinus burn. I'll put the catheter into the coronary sinus, and then directing the probe to myself so that it doesn't go across to the coronary artery, and I will ablate that as well. I think I do this a bit differently, but when we don't do the right side, just really with the isthmus burn, I think there's no concern about no concern about the atrial impulses coming down to the AV node being totally isolated. So basically what I do is maybe so-called a mini maze, whereby definitely the pulmonary vein is going to be isolated, and definitely there's going to be a division all the way to the mitral annulus. And on top of that is this right isthmus line, which I make. And at the same time, most of the atrial incision that I make, I will try to cut across the crista terminalis, because we know that atrial flutters commonly will go along this crista terminalis, and it can either go on the tricuspid side of the coronary sinus or on the other side. So I think that part of the ablation is quite important. So the patients that we have done in the department, we have about 400 patients that had a concomitant AF surgery from May 2001 to 2016. About 340 had RF maces and 60 had HIFU. But I'm going to concentrate on just the initial cases that we had. There were 137 cases, and the reason 137 was because initially we started with the unipolar maces, and then subsequently with the uni and bipolar maces. These were consecutive cases. In fact, at one time, every single patient at AF we will include in this in the surgery. And after May 2006, when HIFU came in, then we don't have consecutive cases anymore, and that's why our data when we reported 2010 was on these 137 cases. And about equal male and female, mean age 85. They were all permanent atrial fibrillation, of which 83% of them were more than 6 months duration. The initial report which I made, and that is for up to 5 years, was about almost 3 years of follow-up. But recently we have just updated, and with a mean follow-up of 10.9 years. So these were all consecutive cases, 65 monopolar and 72 monobipolar. In fact, up to 5 years, they all had very regular reviews, and there were only 3 patients lost to follow-up. And we found recently, when we look at the 10-year data, we were altogether now 7 patients lost to follow-up. I think that's a paper that we presented in 2010. The two groups were quite similar. And in fact, the only thing that we can see is that if you use the monopolar or the unipolar maze, the mean ablation time is about 15 minutes. When you use combined mono and bi, you have about 7 minutes ablation time. Most of the patients were mitral valve cases, and of which a fair number were non-rheumatic. There were some rheumatic, ASDs, and ischemic heart disease. And the combined procedures that were done, 45 repairs, 80 replacements, more with bioprosthetic. And at that time, when we presented the paper in 2010, left atrial size was, and the use of the bipolar device were significant factors for freedom of atrial fibrillation. Now, pacemakers, unfortunately this is only up to 5 years. There were altogether 3 early pacemakers that is in the same hospitalization. And then there were quite a few more, 10 more who were late pacemakers. And I think overall, there are almost 10% pacemaker rate by 5 years. And that is with us doing a fairly limited right side procedure. So I think the 20% pacemaker rate is actually quite a true thing. So if you look at freedom for AF at 10 years, and that's Kaplan-Meier, including all the taking into consideration the depths and so on. And we have freedom from AF about 81% for the monopolar, sorry, it's the other way around. The combined is 81, and then the monopolar is 71. And when we look at whether a patient, because my thoughts were that maybe if a patient had a bowel repair, quite often bowel repair patients are a little bit different from the rest. And I feel that maybe for this group of patients, if they come in AF, I think the chance of getting sinus freedom down the road may be better. And well, there is a trend towards better AF, better freedom from AF at 10 years as compared to replacement. But unfortunately, because our numbers are a bit small, so we do not reach significance. Then when I look at late deaths, all right, 10-year late death stratified by our AF, meaning that whether patient is sinus ridden or patient is in atrial fibrillation. All right, there seems to be a slight difference, but it never came out significant. So whatever significance that is going to be, I think if with a huge number of patients, you may be able to show some significance, but actually the significance is going to be quite marginal. The other thing that I looked at, hope it comes out well, and that is looking at the time of AF, the age of the patient. And we find that patients who are over 70 years and above, at 10 years, only about 20%, 25% of these patients are alive. So do we need to do AF surgery for this group of patients? I think these are important considerations. So I think the same dilemma that James and I have is that there are still many ways that people do MACE. After 10, 15 years, we still are not in agreement. And how do we determine success? Because the success that I have, even though there's about 5% patients with lots of follow-up, we do not do the continuous monitoring 3 days. So if we do, we're probably going to see a lot less results. And then the big question is, what if the patient is in sinus rhythm? Is there any value? Because it does not seem to impact survival very much. So I think it goes down to having to select the patients. I think definitely our data show that smaller atriums are better. So I think we need to select the patients. Maybe we need to select the younger patients to do the AF surgery. And of course, in developing countries, AF devices are still extremely expensive. In fact, if you use a combined monobi, it's probably going to be more expensive than a bioprosthetic or mechanical valve. So by adding that additional cost to the patient, are we actually doing the patient any favor? So I think these are still issues which are of great concern. And also, of course, I think the very important point of patient not dying from the AF surgery. I think because the results are marginal, many patients will still end up with a pacemaker. And then, of course, it will be a tragedy if the patient died because we added a MACE procedure. Thank you.
One experience about the surgical treatment of atrial fibrillation. And more than 50% of them are persistent and permanent AF. And the prevalence of the AF is around 0.6% in China. And this figure will be high in elderly people. And the wobbler disease account for 13%, and non-wobbler account for 65%.
Wow.
And the pathogenesis of the atrial fibrillation, which are involving the substrate and the triggers, which means the different mechanism. And the classification of the atrial fibrillation into several types: paroxysmal, long persistent AF, and the permanent AF. And each type has a different mechanism, so the treatment and the results is different. Since 1987, Dr. Cox performed the first cut and sew MACE procedure. Surgical treatment of the AF has been improved over the 20 years. Now, more technique and more energy source and concepts has been evolved to simplify the procedure and to improve the results. The idea of the maze procedure is build the only electric path in the atrium from the 8th sinus node to the AV node. And now the COX-MAX 3 is still the gold standard for concomitant surgical treatment of the AF. And applying this technique, just the professor mentioned, even more than 90% of the patient can regain acquire the sinus rhythm even in 10 years after operation. And in 2002, and Dr. Damiano introduced the COX-MAX 4 and some new energy like microwave, radio frequency, and cryoablation are used to replace the cut and seal technique to simplify the COX-MAX procedure. And also the results of the COX-MAX 4 is acceptable. After 2 years follow-up, the AF-free rate may reach 80 to 90% in patients admitted COX-MAX 4. And then I will introduce some Hoi experience. During the last 8 years in Hoi Hospital, we conducted 3 studies about the treatment of the AF. The purpose and the detail are listed in the table. And we choose the radio frequency as our energy source in this all 3 studies. All the data presented here are without antiarrhythmic drug. The first study was conducted from the June 2008 to 2010. This is a single-center randomized controls trial. The purpose of the study is to demonstrate the efficiency of the radio frequency ablation over the drug therapy. 210 patients with rheumatic heart disease who need endocrine valve replacement and with a persistent or long-standing persistent fibrillation were included. The inclusion and exclusion criteria are listed in here. And in a word, the patients are all low to medium risk patients. The left atrium diameter is less than 65 millimeter and have a good left ventricular function and no previous operation and no emergency situation. All the patients receive the wall replacement, and all the patients are randomized into 3 groups. One is the left atrial ablation group, and biatrial ablation group, and the drug therapy group. In 2 ablation groups, the patients receive the COX-MAX 4 procedure, use the unipolar approach. And the patient in these 2 groups receives the amiodarone for 3 months post-operatively, and whereas the other group patient use amiodarone for 1 year, and all the patients fulfill the 1 year follow-up. All the patients, the surgical procedure follows the standard COX-MAX 4. The results show the sinus rhythm restoration rate of the ablation group was statistically significantly higher than that in drug group. In left atrial group, at 1 year's follow-up, the sinus rhythm restore rate is reached 75%, and also in biatrial group. Whereas in the drug therapy group, the patient, this figure only is 36%. And the echo results, at 1 year's follow-up, the left atrial diameter decreased dramatically compared with baseline in both ablation group. But we didn't find the similar decreasing in the drug therapy group. And in order to assess the left atrial transport function, we use AVAL more than 10 centimeters per second was defined as effective contraction. Although there was no difference between these three groups in the atrial function recovery rate, but we found only 60 to 70% of the patient regained the left atrial function, even in sinus rhythm restored patient. So I think the lack of atrial contraction is an independent risk factor of the stroke. So it's very important to assess the left atrial function, even in sinus rhythm restored patient, to impact the decision making of the anticoagulatory therapy. The complication we can see, except there were 4 patients in by atrial ablation group received the permanent pacemaker implantation. This figure is around 5%. We conclude from this study is that approximate 4 radiofrequency ablation surgery is a safe and absent treatment for AF patients with rheumatic heart disease, and the radiofrequency ablation concomitant with valvular surgery can bring a higher sinus rhythm restoration rate when compared with medical antiarrhythmic drug therapy in low-risk rheumatic heart disease patients. And there was no difference in the atrial function recovery rate of the surgery between 3 groups. The second study was conducted from 2010 and 2011. This is a multi-center registered study. 6 Chinese clinical centers are involved. The study was to appraise the unipolar approach and the bipolar approach. The inclusion criteria and the exclusion criteria is the same as the first study. All the patients suffering from rheumatic heart disease receive valve replacement and concomitant to the AF radiofrequency ablation. The results showed this is the baseline and operative data of the study. We can see the bipolar group patient have a longer CPB and ACD time. All the patients received the Cox Max 4 procedure. It's biatrial. The sinus rhythm restoration rate of the bipolar ablation group was higher than unipolar group at 6 months and 1 year and 2 years follow-up. In unipolars, 2 years SR restoration rate is 66%, and in the bipolar group is almost 80%. The complication, there is no difference between the 2 groups. We conclude from this study is bipolar radiofrequency ablation can bring a higher sinus rhythm restoration rate when compared with the unipolar approach. And the third study is a clinical outcome of the Wolf Minimate procedure. We conduct this Minimate procedure since 2010, And to the last year, the end of the last year, totally there was 87 patients suffered a long AF were conducted the mini-maze procedure. There were no complications of the surgery except one convert to raised anatomy because of the bleeding. This is a video clip about this mini-maze procedure. In our hospital, the mini-maze we do by two sides pulmonary vein isolation and left appendage excision, and more recently we add the box addition and also the hybrid procedure. But these two later are not added to this group. This is the left side. When we open the myocardium, at first we will use the endo stapler to excise the left appendage. And this will be helpful for the exposure for the next step. And then we cut the muscle ligament, and then we lift the pulmonary vein. And we use by let's see, this is a free procedure. We use electric bipolar approach, and each side we will do 3 times. Okay. The energy released until the moderator indicates the transmural mirror. And we usually do the right first and then to do the left. This is a video clip that only show the left side. Okay. The results are some patients the longest follow-up is 5 years, but we just analyze the 2 years follow-up data. The patients with paroxysmal AF free from the atrial Smith rate reach 76% in 2 years follow-up, and the patient with persistent AF, okay. The energy released until the moderator indicates the transmural mirror. And we usually do the right first and then to do the left. This is a video clip that only show the left side. Okay. The results some patients as the longest follow-up is 5 years, but we just analyze the 2 years follow-up data. The patients with paroxysmal AF free from the atrial Smith rate reach 76% in 2 years follow-up, and the patient with persistent AF just occurs 57%. This is relatively low.
You have to conclude the presentation.
And also we made another subgroup analysis of the patient with a small left atrium, the diameter less than 40 millimeter, was acquired most higher sinus rhythm restoration rate, and this is all same. Okay, that's our conclusion. The mini-maze procedure is safe and absent treatment for long AF patients and patients with paroxysmal AF and RAV less than 40 millimeter mercury. No. Thank you.
Yes. Next speaker, we will observe in Wi-Fi, and his topic is concomitant AF. My practice, my technique, and my results.
I think on the previous speaker already talked a lot about theory. So I just take 3 minutes only talking about the AF procedure we perform in our institution, the result only. So in fact, AF May procedure we already set up 10 years ago. I remember I worked with Jim Wong, Chua Yoling came here, but that time we couldn't develop this technique because in Vietnam the insurance not covered for the instrument, so that we still have to wait until last year we restart this program when insurance cover for the patient in Vietnam now can do AF procedure easily. And from March 2015 to August this year, we performed 80 patients with a May procedure. So the age of the patient ranged from 29 to 68, and so the 2 patients with stroke prior operation. Distribution by pathology of valve disease, 76 patients and 4 patients with coronary bypass. Duration of AF prior surgery is about 6 years. And the left diameter of left atrium about 54, pulmonary artery pressure about 45. So we just start 5 patients with unipolar, and then we change, we do combo. Most of the patients, 75 patients, we do the combo. So the combined technique composed mitral valve repair in 35 patients, mitral valve replacement, both valve replacement, tricuspid repair, and coronary bypass 4 patients. So I skip this video clip. And the cross-gun time just about 54 minutes, including everything, including valve and also including the AF procedure. So the timing of AF just about 80 minutes. No hospital mortality. Reoperation because of bleeding, 2 patients, 18 patients with transient bradycardia just after the procedure, but in ICU it recovered for sinus. Septicemia, 1 patient, and we have just only 1 patient with AV block who need a pacemaker after surgery. So the cardiac death after operation, 86% of the patients revert to sinus, 12% still AF, and 1 patient who need the pacemaker. So in most of cases, when we just stop the bypass, we always have the junctional treatment, and sometimes bradycardia, but after a few hours it reverts to sinus. Age patients still maintain the AF. The age patient, we have 3 with very last left atrium. So now I don't like to do AF procedure for the patient with the left atrium more than 60. I just do the patient less than 60. And 2 other patients with very bad left atrium tissue. So, all right, so I just go quickly on the result of my hospital only, and I would like to take this opportunity to say thank you, Chen Wong, Chu Sat, Chua Yoling, and also Jeswan Dhiren from Malaysia, who cooperate with me to develop this technique in my hospital. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank you to Professor Van Phan to invited me to share the experience with all the pioneer of the AF ablation, AF surgery in Asia. James Wong and Choi Yoling, and Chu Sat is my senior. Let's start the slide. Okay, so this is what I do. This is the pattern that I do follow with the COPMES for in our unit. When we do the minimally invasive to the right mini thoracotomy, the lesion pattern is the same, but the energy source that we use is combined with the bipolar and the cryo. So this is what we do. We start from the right side of the beating heart. We do the pulsing at the base of the right atrial appendage. and we do the light appendage ablation down to the on the aortic side, and then we do the other pattern to the SVC and IVC line to another bursting just in the middle, and then do another lesion, vertical lesion up to the right atrioventricular groove. And at that point we make another purse string and do the cryoablation down to the tricuspid annulus at 2 o'clock, and then do another cryoablation at the 10 o'clock, and that completes the right side lesion. And then we do the isolated pulmonary vein isolation on the right side by the bipolar, and then we make the left atriotomy and go on with the box lesion 3 and 4. To complete the box lesion, we use the cryoablation with the sequential cryoablation that we use to connect. This is a bit different from when we do through the mediastinotomy. And then we close the atrial appendage from inside with a double layer, and then do the cryoablation down to the pulmonary vein side, and then do the mitral isthmus lesion and down to the about P2, and we do it with the endocardial and the epicardial as well, to make sure that we have the good transparency of the isthmus lesion. So this is our practice since 2004. We followed this COP-MES4 from the WASH-U protocol. And our experience in our unit, I go briefly, we have done about 354 operations. This mitral mass about 250, mini mitral about 40. And this is our study from the surgical AF ablation. So we go from starting from the first. So this is the device that we use, the bipolar, and this is a cryo. And in our 63 cases, our first 63 cases, we have found that so we use the combined with the bipolar and monopolar, like the combo, and our result is quite satisfactory, about 90% at 2 years. And in this study, we be able to study the subgroup, and with the group of the left atrium diameter less than 6 centimeter and larger than 6 centimeter. So if the left atrium is larger than 6 centimeter, the success rate is dropped down to about 30%, while if it's less than 6 centimeter, the success rate is about 95% at 6 months and 1 year. And we go on when we have the cryo, so we use the cryo lesion just instead of using the bipolar at the isthmus on the right and the left side. And this is our study. We have found that the cryo is a little better, but no significant difference, with it about more than 90% and 89%. In our series, we have looked at the mitral valve repair and mitral valve replacement as well. In the mitral valve repair of 70 cases, more than 90% is a degenerative pathology, and mitral valve replacement is a rheumatic. So the result of our group on the success rate of the mitral valve repair with the AF ablation is a bit better, with nearly 100%, and the replacement is only 84%. This is what we find. We think that might be the pathology, but there's no evident proof of that. And then we go on with the study on the minimally invasive, our first 24 case. So this is the combined pathology, so it's the mitral valve repair and the mitral valve replacement. The overall probability of sinus rhythm is about 80%, above 80% at 1.5 and 2 years. Then we further have a look at the two groups of only the mitral valve repair with the mostly is the degenerative pathology to compare with the minimal invasive approach by right mini thoracotomy and the median stenotomy. And this is what we find. Mortality is not different, about 1 in stenotomy group and 0 in the mini group. The early defibrillation in the first month is about 65% compared to 75%. And permanent pacemaker in our series is about 5.8% in stenotomy group and 2.5% in the mini group. And the stroke rate is 1.4% compared to 0% in mini group. And this is the summary of the overall freedom from defibrillation in our series. And this freedom from AF and freedom from anti-arrhythmic drug. Thank you very much.
Any question or question? Yes.
Hello. Okay, my question is not for atrial fibrillation. Talk about mitral valve replacement. You know, because the first thank you so much for your very nice presentation, all of you, all speaker. But I want to ask you, all of you. That means in Vietnam there are some opinions. That means there are some kind of the patient is maybe more than 50 years old. It's difficult to choose or the prosthesis to do the mitral valve replacement between the tissue valves and mechanical valves. Sometimes it's difficult, caused by the coagulation complication after operation. In this case, some cardiologists asked us to use the mechanical valves because they said with the fibrillation like that, by the way, after operation, the patient had to use the coagulation, and you can use the mechanical valves prosthesis. And with your technique, Mace technique procedure is very good technique like that. What do you think about this opinion? We can change or not change opinion. And are there in the world are there the good factor to predict the good success of the May operation in choosing the prosthesis for mitral valve replacement? Thank you.
That is very interesting question that I usually was asked about when we have to put the valve to the patient, any benefit that we perform the AF surgery. I have to mention one paper. That is a big paper from Korea, nearly 700 cases as I remember, and regarded either tissue valve or mechanical valve, no different. You can get benefit from the AF surgery, both either mechanical or tissue valve. In my real practice, I look at the chance of success in this case, high or low. How did I know? The first thing, if I know the long duration of AF, I think that the chance of success is very low. So, prefer for mechanical valve, the first thing. The second thing, the left atrium side pretty big, more than 70 mil. So, the success rate very low. I prefer mechanical valve. And if I think that the success rate in my hand high, in this case, the second point that I look at, the indication of valve, such as child barrier, I use tissue valve, such as the age of patient more than 65, I prefer tissue valve. Otherwise, I follow the guideline of tissue valve or mechanical valve. But I can say that either mechanical valve or tissue valve, no different, mentioned from paper from Korea. And in my hand, when I will not present in this presentation. I analyze from my data when I replace the valve, compare between the success case, that means saturated, and fail case, that means persistent in AF, long-term survival in the success case, better result. When we replace valve with mechanical valve, what does it mean? It means that both groups take warfarin, controlled factor warfarin. So it means that the survival of the patient depends on the result of sinus symptom or AF. In my study, saturated survival better than AF in 10 years.
That's a very good question about whether you should maybe do AF, you will have to put a mechanical valve. I think there's no real data that shows that AF surgery improves survival or even improves stroke rate. Okay? The real crux of doing AF surgery is to prevent tachyarrhythmias. You can get tachyarrhythmias, okay? And also, we will repair user bioprosthesis. You get the sinus rhythm, you don't want to take warfarin, especially with the left atrial appendage out also at the same time. Right? Now, the question is, I think we all go back to, you think that you can, you think you can do it successfully and do it safely at the time of surgery? It doesn't matter to me whether you're putting in a mechanical or bioprosthetic valve. Like what Dr. Damiano said, you have only one chance of doing it. Lifetime opportunity, because you will open up the patient. And you can do it successfully and with safety, and you know they can have a high success rate, do it. That's my thinking. I know it's not for survival, it's not for stroke rate, it's for quality of life. Do anybody have any?
I would like to take the opportunity to pick your expert brains. Well, we in pediatrics, we don't have a lot of atrial fibrillation to deal with, but we have giant left atrium. So in our unit, we have a procedure for giant left atrium because sometimes you have compression of the left bronchi and it can create lots of problems following multiple repair. So we excise a complete circular ring of the left atrium, exactly like you would do in a transplantation. You can reduce very dramatically the left atrium and very easily. You can do it with or without excising the left atrial appendage. So in our series of patients, I don't know, it's 16 patients, there's 20% of patients that had atrial fibrillation before. Very rare atrial fibrillation even in pediatrics. They were in sinus rhythm afterwards. I wonder how efficient would be this procedure in adult patients and why is it not more used?
I think what you do is primary vein isolation, absolutely. You're doing primary vein isolation. And removing excess tissue, obviously reduction of atrial, the left atrial. Okay. Well, I mean, based on the scientific data, if a patient has chronic and persistent AF, where there is what do you call that, circuits elsewhere, I mean, there's enough evidence to show that primary vein isolation is not enough. It's not enough. I mean, this is another doctor who does it last time from Australia, Dr. Farnsworth. He came and mentioned about that, and what he's doing is absolutely primary vein isolation. I think if those chronic complex AF, you need more than that. I think you need more than just primary vein isolation. Right maze and the mitral isthmus line. Because with primary vein isolation, you can get a circuit going around, and you can go get a circuit to get atrial flutter. I mean, that's based on our scientific data from those mapping studies and so on. Okay, I mean, although I say with caution because I think nobody has really mapped a patient with, apart from NITA, mapped patients with valvular heart disease. What Cox did last time when he did this research was based on people with normal atrium, people with both Parkinson, what he mapped. And mapped, he found that their circuits, going in and out at different time, different place, and they can be in the left atrium, can be right atrium. So the maze was based on that. Okay, the maze was created to prevent any circuits that can occur. I mean, like even the cardiologist can tell that there are circuits in the left atrial appendage. In those patients that came in with atrial tachycardia and atrial fibrillation, Hezekiah, one of the famous from France, cardiologist from France, who devised this so-called Palmarian isolation method for cardiologists, he said that in his paper, 20%, he put down 19% of patients who come in atrial tachycardia and atrial fibrillation have a circuit in the left atrial appendage. So again, my thinking is that should remove the left atrial appendage. I mean, it is electrophysiologically correct to remove the left atrial appendage. You don't remove it, it's fine. I mean, it's your thing. But electrophysiologically, it's good to remove the left atrial appendage. And I think that's the way to advance AF surgery, to think electrophysiologically, not to think my method, your method, or that method, and so on. Think electrophysiologically and use the data that we know. Thanks.
Regarding to the pulmonary isolation, I think that we have to read the paper published last year or 2 years ago from James Cook. He commented from that paper very good. He said that for pulmonary isolation, he preserved just only in the case that he do a valve replacement or cappage in the condition of paroxysmal AF. Otherwise, it's a long-standing AF. He said that at least complete miss positive, either antibody replacement or CBG.
Close it up. So the next session, we're 1 hour later. We're 1 hour later. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
It's a little bit late now, so I propose that we move to the last session, microvalve stenosis, and for the round table, I think we will move to tomorrow, right? So the last session is micro stenosis, and because Professor Trần Quyết Tiến is not here, so I would like to invite Dr. Đỗ Quang Huân. Dr. Đỗ Quang Huân is the director of our hospital, and he's also the chief of the department of cardiology department. And Christian, you go back to chair this session too. And I also would like to invite Professor Christian Pizza to chair this session too. Okay, the show what's on.
Alright, good afternoon, Chairperson and ladies and gentlemen. Today I will talk about the cutaneous mitral valve commissurotomy. And as you know that the rheumatoid heart disease is still a big problem in the developing country. It estimates of nearly 60 million people suffer from rheumatic heart disease worldwide, and 223,000 related deaths each year. And we see that when the mitral valve abuse of the commissure, they will cause the mitral valve stenosis. And we back to the history, surgery, closed heart surgery begin by Suta to 1925 on the young women with mitral valve stenosis, devising a new procedure. He made an opening of the appendage of the left atrium and insert the finger in order to explore and correct the image of mitral valve. And in 1948, the belly do the commissurotomy first in this women, and for mitral valve replace start in 1960. And Professor Alex think that why don't we correct the mitral valve and use the tissue of the patient to repair the mitral valve, and we needed to use the anticoagulation. Is better for the patient. For the cutaneous valve balloon adaptation, first used by Inuit, he used the balloon to open to commissure, and after 1 year after 1985, Locke used the cylindrical balloon dilatation, and after that the Z-back double balloon technique, and Patel used the bifold and trifold catheter. Today the mitral valve. Stephanie used the technique with the correct approach. He insert balloon through the aortic valve, and Kreiber, the first doctor in the world, used the metallic device to open the mitral valve. And the mechanical of BTMC is like for the surgical commissurotomy, we split the fusion of the commissure and open the valve. The patient selection depends on the clinical profile and the valve morphology. The most investigated the valvular calcification. For for patient, we should avoid the anatomic contraindication of the technique. First, if the insufficient, he has the left atrial thrombosis. Insufficient when the thrombosis in left atrial exists. If the patient refuses to be done the surgery, normally we give the patient the warfarin for 6 months or 1 year, and insufficient the thrombosis disappear. Mitral valve resuscitation greater than 2 months, massive or by commissural calcification, because if the patient has the commissural calcification, it's very easy to we can tear the valve during the procedure. Severe aortic valve disease or severe plaque with stenosis plus resuscitation associated with mitral valve stenosis, we should do surgery to correct the aortic valve and tricuspid valve, and severe concomitant coronary artery disease required ring bypass surgery. And the procedure normally in heart tissue we use the inner balloon. You see the inner balloon. The tip of the balloon to use dilatation of the mitral valve, and this inside is elongation, balloon stretching tube to elongate of the balloon, and we use the lightator to open large the atrial septum guidewise and we use the stylet to direct in the balloon to the mitral valve, the syringe to do inflation, and the wire with the tip soft and very steep wire, and the ruler to measure the balloon. This the balloon, when we inflate with the low pressure, the balloon will open the tip of the balloon, and with the high pressure it will open full of the balloon and stretch the fuse of the commissure. And you see this principle of this technique approach. We puncture the septal atrial septum, and we insert the guide wire. We use a laser to dilate to open larger the atrial the atrial septum, and then we insert balloon. We insert balloon through the mitral valve when we from the left atrium to go through the left ventricle. We inflate and we pull back the balloon, and when we start we go in the high pressure, and we open the commissure. Yeah, that is the image, the thing that we inject the contrast to the left, to the right atrium, and the contrast return to left atrium. From left atrium, we see this the left atrium, and we draw the line from the upper limit of the tragus valve to through the left side of the left atrium. And on the middle of this line, we draw the line into the inferior line of the left atrium, and then one edge of the vertebrae. This is the puncture point. In practice, you see, we insert and we puncture. We use needle to puncture the left from the right atrium to the left atrium. After that, we check by the contrast, and the contrast show that we already in the left atrium, and with the dilatator, we insert from the right atrium to the left atrium, and after that we check again. We make sure that we are already in the left atrium. We insert the guide wire, and you see the wire from the right to left atrium, and then we use the dilator. We use the dilator to dilate larger the atrial septum. After that, we insert the inner balloon through from the right to the left atrium, and we pull back the guide wire. The inner balloon now already into the left atrium. And you see, we use the stylet to steer to drive the balloon from the left atrium to the left ventricle. We inflate a little bit, and when the balloon go through into the left atrium, we inflate a little bit, and we pull back. After pull back, with full inflation, and we open the mitral valve. That is after procedure, we put all the device out. We can use the ductal balloon technique. With the ductal balloon technique, this more difficult to dilate the mitral valve. This is when we use the ductal balloon technique. You see, we should insert two balloons into from the left atrium into the left ventricle and dilate. Or we use the small or the big and small balloon technique. For the cardiac technique, this metallic device. For the metallic device, it's easy it's very difficult to drive from the left atrium into the left ventricle, and normally it causes the complication, pericardial effusion. That is the image of the use of the cardiac device. The definition of good immediate result first the final valve area larger than 1.5 square centimeter, and an increase of at least 25% of the valve area. Final valve larger than 1.5 square centimeter with the mitral regurgitation greater than 2+. Long-term result, if we can see is initial successful, survival rate are excellent. The need for secondary surgery is infrequent, and functional improvement occur in most cases. Resolutions after PMC generally been defined as the loss of more 50% of the initial gain, and the valve area less than 1.5, and the resolutions normally low, and 40% from 3 to 10 years. One registry from 1995 to 2001, we can see in 70 countries show that the use, you see, the left ventricle to left atrium gradient decreased sharply, and the around mitral valve area increased from 0.94 to up to more than 2 square centimeter, and the pulmonary artery pressure going down, and the left atrium pressure is going down. Especially for the patient when the mitral stenosis during pregnancy, if we do operation, the mortality of the mother and the child is very high. They compare BTMC from the surgery. We see that BTMC with the mortality nearly 5%. Otherwise, when we do the surgery, the mortality is nearly 40%. It's so high. On the conclusion, in contrast to the surgical CMC OMC, produce excellent compare only hemodynamic improvement when we did BTMC and associated with the lower rate of residual stenosis and restenosis and need to for intervention. However, the good result, lower cost and elimination of the drawback of thoracotomy and cardiopulmonary bypass indicate that BTMC should be treated of joint for patients with high pliable rheumatic mitral valve stenosis. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah. How many of you have done a closed mitral valvotomy? Let me see a show of hands. See? How many of you have seen a closed mitral valvotomy? And how many of you don't even know what closed mitral valvotomy is? So you can see that I've asked this question. Okay, I'm just asking this question. Is there a place for closed mitral valvotomy today? Because most of you may think it is obsolete. I don't think so. And to start off, let me just ask a question. What is closed mitral valvotomy? What we do is to put the patient in a lateral position and do a lateral thoracotomy, either anterolateral or posterolateral. And the first thing we do is just to explore the mitral valve through the left atrium. Very simple, just put a left atrial purse string. You all know how to do that. And to confirm the echo diagnosis, if you need to. At the time when I was doing closed mitral valvotomy, all we did was clinical examination. The patient comes in, we listen to the heart, there is an opening snap, there's a mid-diastolic murmur, the patient is suitable for closed mitral valvotomy. The big advantage today for you, you can confirm that with echocardiography, and we'll confirm it with finger exploration. Once we are sure of that, we just go ahead and put a purse string down here, and we introduce a dilator and open up the dilator. That's all there is to the procedure. Very, very simple. Professor Juan has shown you the complex procedure of balloon commissurotomy. Let me look at it. I'm not going to run through all these steps, but these are, in fact, I have a whole video series done on the procedure. But you can see, if you went through them one by one, there are only 12 steps to it. And what does this tell you? It tells you, number one, that it's a very simple procedure with a very short learning curve. It used to be done by general surgeons, not cardiac surgeons. We did not have cardiac surgeons when I was starting my career. Right? And there's no need for a sophisticated team. Just a general surgeon and an anesthetist, and that's all we need. It is very cheap, and all we needed in terms of instrumentation was just a tub dilator. If you bought a tub dilator made in USA, it cost you $800 US, mostly. If you bought one made in India, it cost you 250 Singapore dollars. Extremely cheap, usable, not disposable. Just go ahead and sterilize it and use it. Alright? And that's what it looks like. What else does it tell you? The great outcomes. The procedure has been proven many, many times before. Here's this particular patient, pre-operatively, had a valve orifice of 0.5, post-op 1.7, and as you heard from Professor Juan just now, anything from 1.5 to 2, pretty good result without incompetence. With this procedure, you can progressively go up and you can put your finger in again to feel whether there is a regurgitation. If not, enlarge the top xylator a little bit more, repeat the procedure, feel for MR again. So we don't have to worry about post-op echoes. Here's this patient, 14 hours, we did the operation pretty late in the evening. Next day he was already extubated, sitting up and trying to smile. 14 days later he was smiling. I was very fortunate and privileged to be invited to Prof. Chua Yaling's program in Papua New Guinea. And that's where we did this. So many patients can be treated by this particular procedure. Access is one of the things we're looking at. This is a general ward when I went with Prof. Chua to Papua New Guinea. When I look at this whole bunch, I asked the doctors who were taking us around, how many of these patients in this ward, there were about 50 beds in here, how many of them were rheumatics? And the answer was half the ward was rheumatics. And I asked the question again, of this 50%, how many were pure microstenosis? And they said half of them. So these 12 patients were admitted just for medical therapy because they did not know how to do closed mitral valvotomy, and they didn't have facilities for open commissurotomy until the General Hospital team, the Singapore Heart Center went there. So in short, closed mitral valvotomy actually addresses the iron triangle of healthcare. For those of you who are not aware of what the iron triangle is, this is what it is. We talk about cost, which is minimal, quality, and because cost is minimal, access is there, and because you end up with pretty good outcomes and therefore quality. So if you're an economist, if you're an administrator in a hospital, you must look at the iron triangle of healthcare, especially in third world countries. We don't have the money to do sophisticated procedures. I think for every PTMC, every percutaneous balloon valvuloplasty, you could be doing 50 closed mitral valvotomies. I don't know what it is, but we have to work out the cost and see how that can come about. So back to the question, is there a place for closed mitral valvotomy today? The answer almost is yes. Almost any surgeon, not necessarily just a cardiac surgeon, can master this technique in a very short time. So the teaching of C1, do one, teach one definitely will apply. You don't need a lot of learning experience. What is the relevance? You have seen plenty of data presented today that we don't have all this high skill equipment and what have you, but the incidence of rheumatic mitral stenosis is phenomenal in third world countries. Right? So definitely there is. Now, if you are not interested in closed mitral valvotomy, do you think you as a cardiac surgeon in the first world country must try and get back TAVI? We lost TAVI. Why did we lose TAVI? The best approach for TAVI is transapical dilatation of the aortic valve, is antegrade. Right? And we started that. Unfortunately, we lost it because the complication was from LV apical bleeding at the end of the procedure. And how did that happen? Because we lost the technique of putting an LV apical stage. Remember the days when we did an LV vent through an LV apex? And then now we gave that up and we're doing it through pulmonary vein. So we no longer put in an LV apical stage. So those of you in Vietnam, you have a chance to tell the first world countries how to put in an LV apical stage if you start with closed mitral valvotomy. So you relearn the procedure. Does this play Okay, look at this. I want those of you to look at this to tell me what's wrong with this method of putting in an LV apical stage. This is a TAVI. stop there for a while. What's wrong with that technique? Sucha? Those people with TAVI centers, those people who are doing TAVI at the beginning, transit people. Let me see the next one. This other one. Can you put back the display? Okay, look at this. This is closed microvagotomy. This is how I do my transapical stage. Very simple, just cut a strip of Teflon buttress, about 1.5 cm. Or just put a metra suture through that strip of Teflon suture. At the end of it, just tie it up. It doesn't even bleed. And then go ahead and reinforce it so that you're wearing belts and braces. Extremely simple procedure. What was wrong with the first technique? You can stop there. What was wrong with the first technique? The guy didn't know how to do it. He just put multiple stitches and they were superficial. They were not full thickness left ventricular stitches. Just imagine, in rheumatic mitral stenosis, the LV is actually very thin and still we did not have complications with bleeding. On the other hand, with severe aortic stenosis, the LV is extremely thick and there's no reason for the stitch to bleed, and yet they bled. Thank you very much.
So very nice demonstration. Next is Dr. Fan. Repair and replacement.
Well, the repair technique we already discussed a lot this afternoon for mitral stenosis. I already showed you in combined mitral stenosis and regurgitation repair. Now I just talk about the other side of surgery for mitral stenosis, mitral valve replacement. This is our institution, and then from 1992 to 2016, we performed more than 26,000 operations, and the valve surgery presented in about 35%, 60% of the genital. So the characteristic of mitral valve repair disease, mitral valve disease in Vietnam, of course, rheumatic fever, and 60% of patients had advanced heart failure in our series. Poor medical treatment before surgery, and of course follow-up sometimes not that easy. Now for mitral valve stenosis, so total we replaced 3,850 patients. There are three groups: aortic valve repair here. I'm talking about repair. We repair totally more than 3,000 patients. Aortic mitral valve repair, and this is a mitral valve repair for both the stenosis and insufficiency. For insufficiency, we repair 2,278 patients. This means that for mitral stenosis, we also repair more than 1,000 cases in the last 25 years. So this is how to do commissurotomy. I think we should move quickly on this technique because we already discussed a lot about this technique this afternoon. So we will go quickly. And now for mitral stenosis with the valve replacement. In total, we replaced more than 5,000 patients, including aortic valve replacement, both aortic valve replacement and mitral valve repair, aortic valve and mitral valve repair replacement, and for mitral valve repair replacement alone, 2,605 patients. So indication to replace the valve. Oh, what is it? So mitral valves. Okay, let's do this. So I would like to show you some valve we should not repair. So this this valve should not repair. Both commissure, fusion, and calcify. I don't like to repair this valve. This valve also, you see the calcification, almost the whole of the opening of the orifice. So I don't try to repair this valve. So this is a type 3 disease for both anterior posterior leaflet. You see, for this patient, you see we have a lot of tissue. So valvulus hypertrophy and very long cochlear. But I don't like to repair this valve. But for this patient, if you just put a ring, I'm sure that the patient do not have any leak after surgery. But just a few years later, the patient will go back. So that for the patient that we estimate the long-term result not good, it's better we change valve at the beginning. For this case also, you see very small orifice valve thickening, especially posterior leaflet completely retracted. So I don't like to repair that. I don't like to repair this valve too. You see papillomastoid, hypertrophy almost attached to the leaflet. So we, Dr. Carpentier said that everyone can repair the valve, and all valve can be repaired. But the question is a long-term result. When you estimate the results not more than 10 years, it's better you change the valve than try to repair. How can we repair this valve? We need to change, of course. This valve, the same thing, If I repair, I open this, put a ring, no leak, but a few years later, the patient go back. So don't try to do that. Like this valve, very small anterior leaflet, greasy posterior leaflet, it's not favorable for repair. This case, you see endocarditis rupture of all of the cord on anterior and some posterior leaflet. So not easy to repair. And this patient, we already do leaflet retention at the first operation, more than 15 years ago. So after 20 years later, the patient go back. This time we replace the valve. Don't try to repair again. So there's some valve we can select for the replacement. Dr. Song will talk about this more. So in general, we have two type of prosthetic valve. This is mechanical valve. This is bioprosthetic valve. And okay, so how to? First of all, we need to remove the valve and then measure the orifice. And then we pass the suture through the annulus, and then pass the suture to the valve, and slide the valve down. And then we can do in separate suture or continuous suture. So in this case, we can do continuous suture. Continuous suture, we need to use very long suture. And personally, I prefer to do. I prefer to do the separate interactive suture. So I would like to skip this video clip because it's take a little bit long, and for valve replacement, I think most of the surgeons here we already do that. So that I would like to keep this video clip. For surgical detail, the suture point why is that? The suture point, we have 5 different points: simple, interrupted suture, non-inverted suture, figure 8 suture, and continuous suture. Okay, so this is a simple interrupted suture, and B is a figure 8 suture, C is an inverted suture, and D is a non-inverted suture, and this is a continuous suture. So skip this video clip. So now we talk about the complication of mitral valve replacement. So there's something we know, but something we don't understand about the complication after mitral valve replacement. So now, for what we know about this, the anticoagulant therapy, so we have some patient with thromboembolism problem, hemorrhage problem. We have air embolized endocarditis, aortic valve insufficiency. If your suture attack the valve, aortic valve with you, and prosthetic valve dysfunction because of the clot, because of small left ventricle, subvalvular apparatus fusion, the valve structure deterioration, and so on. And then we also have another complication is a cardiac insufficiency after valve replacement. The other complication, but we don't understand, is that number one, the suture adhesion. Sometimes the patient have a hemolysis, revisitation. Some patient not oftenly, but sometimes we have the patient, the suture adhesion. We redo the patient 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, but it still happens. So we don't understand on this. And the second one is annulus rupture, left ventricle rupture, maybe because when we resect the basal corner, we traction too much on the annulus, penetrating suture, extensive annulus decalcification, or when the left ventricle too small. And sometimes we have the left ventricle obstruction, especially when you change the mitral valve in AV canal patient. And prosthetic valve rejection is also a question on this. The panels we sometimes we can see, but to explain this complication, something we don't understand. So this is a clot of the mechanical valve after a replacement. You can see here with the clot almost stuck the one leaflet. So this is the degeneration of bioprocessing valve after a few years. So here you can see we have both. This is the panels, and then we have the clot. When you have a complication like this, normally the panels happen first, and the movement of the leaflet was involved after that, and the clots happen later. So in this case, you see the clot almost stuck the whole valve. This patient, after removal of the valve, you see the panels already almost cover the subvalvular. You see these are panels. This is the panel. We take out the valve, and the panel just beneath the valve. So this is the panels. So in conclusion, the feasibility of repair for mitral stenosis was just about 50%. So mitral valve replacement is a routine operation, but complications sometimes very serious. Follow-up after surgery was still a challenge, especially in developing countries like Vietnam. And in such cases, the repair is much better than replacement for mitral valve disease. Thank you very much.
Selection of valve and AF. I hope by the end of this talk you will know which valve to choose. So here I'm talking about what sort of a valve you're going to use when you're going to replace the patient's valve. And the factors to consider when you're selecting heart valve prosthesis can be divided into two groups. One is the prosthesis characteristics, two is the patient factors. I think the third factor is surgeon factors, but I'm not going to go into that part of it. So now, what are the characteristics of an ideal valve? This was written out by Dwight Hucken. Again, to tell you my age, I've met both Dwight Hucken and Charles Bailey before, when they were alive, of course. And he talked about 10 commandments of valve characteristics. And today, we are still counting. What should the prosthesis characteristics be? These you can get all any website. It must not propagate emboli. It must be chemically inert and not damage blood elements. It must offer no resistance to physiological flows. It must close promptly. It must remain closed during the appropriate phase of the cardiac cycle. It must have lasting physical and geometric features. It must be inserted in the physiological site. It must be capable of permanent fixation. It must not annoy the patient. And it must be technically practical to insert. Can you think of any valve that has all these 10 characteristics? And there are many more that you can think about. So if you look at these valves that are available in the market up to year 2000, there are more now today. How can you choose what prosthesis you want to use in your patient? If you can't choose, you might as well just take a coin, toss it in the air, heads valve A, tails valve B, and keep on doing that until you select the valve, and you still will not be wrong. But we should be more scientific about it. At least consider the following things, which is mortality and morbidity in terms of thrombogenesis, ease of use, structural valve degeneration, the sound, which is quality. If those of you who play poker, don't put in a mechanical valve, because somebody will know what cards you have in your hands. Yeah. So it's that kind of thing. And noise has been used as an excuse for divorce, by the way, for marriages. So think about it as well. So if you are near the verge of divorce, go put in a mechanical valve, you have an excuse to divorce your wife. Or the other way around. Now how do we classify prostheses? It could be mechanical, and you see the type of mechanical valve that you have. Of course, the ball and cage no longer exists, although it was a good valve. Then the tissue valves, which are stented versus stentless, porcine versus pericardial. Slowly, some of these valves are disappearing from the scene. AATS actually has given criteria on valve performance, and these are what you can get on the website as well. I'm just clicking it slowly so that you have some time to read if you want to. So from the criteria, you can see that both valve groups are subject to all of the above criteria for valve failure. But there are certain characteristics. Bioprostheses are more prone to structural degeneration with time. We don't expect it to break down within the first 10 years, but so after 10 years you want to look at it. Bioprostheses are less affected by thromboembolism and anticoagulation related complications, and most mechanical valve morbidity is due to anticoagulation. So what are the differences between the two types of valve when you classify it? Mechanical valve, they are durable but thrombogenic. Patients must be anticoagulated, and warfarin creates a new problem. Now, some time ago, not that long ago, for a year back, they were trying to conduct a trial replacing warfarin with factor Xa inhibitors like dabigatran and things like that. When they came to me and talked about a trial, I asked them whether there was an ethical trial. Because to me it was unethical, because the standard of care for mechanical valve is warfarin. And before the trial ended, they terminated the trial because there were too many complications with factor Xa inhibitors. So the dabigatran cannot be used. And even today, the dabigatran in atrial fibrillation is suspect, because most of the complication with dabigatran is not with thrombosis but with bleeding. Because you can't use a poison and say don't need to monitor it. And that's what dabigatran was. So if you look at this, that's what happens with thrombosis. With tissue valve, less thrombogenic, but durability is limited. And here you can see all sorts of valve breakdown from porcine valve to pericardial valve. So interestingly, when you look at subgroup analysis, unfortunately, there's a paradox, because when you put in tissue valve, the tissue valve seems to last longer in an older patient. We want tissue valve to last longer in a younger patient. So you put it in young patient, it lasts longer, that's great. If you put an older patient, they die sooner, that's fine, because their lifespan is less. Unfortunately, there's a paradox. The older the patient, the longer the tissue valve lasts. That's the sad part of it. Right? And if you look at the data here, according to age and how they function, look at the younger age group, they don't last very long. But ultimately, what is important is the quality of life for the patient. Or what is more important is not the durability of the prosthesis, but the durability of the patient. We don't care what the patient dies from. If he dies after valve surgery, the durability is not there. So this was analyzed, and it was found that when you look at tissue valve and mechanical valve, this paper was published in 1993, where it said that the survival of patients, irrespective of whether you put in a mechanical valve or a tissue valve, was the same. Alright? With mechanical valve, you die from thrombosis. With tissue valve, you die from valve degeneration. But they die at the same time. If that is true, why don't we concentrate on quality of life? Right? Now you may think that is an old paper, but it wasn't just an old paper, because subsequently Ruel came up with the same results when he analyzed a group of patients as well, that there was no difference in patient survival, as he has shown here. So the single factor that affects the quality of life is warfarin therapy. Let me just ask those of you who are here, how many of you use more mechanical valve than tissue valve? Let me just see by show of hands. And how many of you manage anticoagulants of your patient, or you refer to an anticoagulation clinic? What is it? You manage yourself? Yeah. If you put in a mechanical valve, you must manage the anticoagulant yourself. Don't send the patient to an anticoagulation clinic. Because the responsibility is yours. It is yours. So that may deter you from using mechanical valve. It's not an easy problem at all. If you look at studies with warfarin therapy, compliance issue and therapeutic range. Right? When therapeutic range is too low, that's what happens. If too high, that's what happens. And if you look at the results that have come out, even at 12 weeks, in centers, not Asia because we don't keep data, 44% of INR is in the therapeutic range, only 44% mind you, 38% subtherapeutic, 18% above therapeutic. These are in Western countries. Eastern countries, you can expect this to be worse. Even in Singapore, it is bad. At 32 weeks, in the adherent group, that means compliant patients, INR was out of range in 38%. In a non-adherent group, it was out of range 50% of the time that when they examine the patients. So what are my messages here? Number one, mechanical and tissue valves enjoy the same patient survival. Tissue valve patients enjoy better quality of life, lesser problems with anticoagulants. And patient factors that you want to look at, these are patient factors as given out by the college and by association, heart association. But patients themselves may want to consider the following things. This was Rahimullah himself in 2011. So know your patient, what is the diagnosis, whether it's a single valve, multiple valve, what's his functional class, whether he understands anticoagulation, whether you understand anticoagulation, what is his age and lifestyle. Let me tell you, some years ago I had a young Vietnamese patient come to me with a severe mitral valve dysfunction. He was a professional footballer for Vietnam. He was quite an uneducated person. And he wanted to continue his life playing football so that he can get money from the country. If he stopped playing football, that's the end of him. Right? He was 20 years old or 18 years old. And he opted for a tissue valve so that he could continue to play football instead of getting a mechanical valve, getting on anticoagulants, and then no more football. That was many years ago. It was Vietnamese patient, interestingly. And I did that for him. So things to consider when you are choosing a prosthesis for your patient is the patient age, the anatomic nature of the valve lesion, the desirability of pregnancy, we have said this many times before, presence of infection, surgeon experience, and the risk of anticoagulation. How many of you believe that doctors ought to be paternalistic? In other words, that you know best and you should advise your patient, rather than to say the patient makes a choice. How many of you in favor of paternalism? You all don't think so? I'm a firm believer of paternalism because I think that we have spent our lifetime in this profession, we know best. If we don't have a conflict of interest, we know best. If you have a conflict of interest, well, you shouldn't be paternalistic. That's all I need to leave with you. Let me just, before I come back to the question of what prosthesis to use when you have AF. I do not believe, in fact, I challenge the guidelines for anticoagulation in atrial fibrillation. Every time we think that somebody has AF, he goes on anticoagulant. That's the guideline, and I think it is wrong. I think if you have I feel very strongly that thrombosis and embolism are two separate entities, so that we should not put it down as thromboembolism. If you take thromboembolism as one disease, let me explain to you why. In my experience, a person with intermittent or paroxysmal AF is at risk of thrombosis and embolism. that patient must go on anticoagulation. The patient who is chronic AF is at risk of thrombosis, but not necessarily risk of embolism in atrial fibrillation. Every time we think that somebody has AF, he goes on anticoagulant. That's the guideline, and I think it is wrong. I think if you are chronic, I feel very strongly that thrombosis and embolism are two separate entities, so that we should not put it down as thromboembolism. If you take thromboembolism as one disease, let me explain to you why. In my experience, a person with intermittent or paroxysmal AF is at risk of thrombosis and embolism. That patient must go on anticoagulation. The patient who is chronic AF is at risk of thrombosis, but not necessarily risk of embolism. We as cardiac surgeons have seen many patients with mitral valve disease, AF, last left atrial. When we open up, there's a big clot in there, but the patient had never embolized before. So we started all AF patients on anticoagulation. We could end up with more complications for anticoagulation than complications from embolism. And that's from my experience. Somewhere during a GNU meeting, Dr. Funari, who has kept a data base for star valves and whatnot, is going to talk on how we Asian surgeons should have a database for heart valve. And I hope we can get the message home. Thank you.
It's the last of today, so I would like to talk shortly, just a minute. My topic is valvular heart disease and pregnancies. As you know, heart disease complicates under 1% only in pregnancy, but the mortality and morbidity is very, very high. Why? Because of one operation, but we have to care for 2 persons, mother and baby. So the pressures on the surgeon is very, very high. In European countries, based on pregnancies and heart disease, the valvular disease, in the microstenosis and microinfarctus, it's occur in most cases, 63%. Aortic valve disease is only 23 only. And the medicals of aortic stenosis or microstenosis like genital rheumatics, etc. But the big problem is now is pregnancy in patients with protective valve, mechanical or tissue valve, is the same risk. How about the physiological change in normal pregnancies? If the patient has breast milk, the TPVR reduced and plus volume and cardiac output increase around 50%. So her risk increase maybe 10 to 30 beats per minute. And during labor and delivery, cardiac output increase as a result of uterine contractions and maternal efforts. And how about the coagulation? The production of TPA, protein Cs and F increase, and also have increased. So the patient has a hypercoagulable state. How about the valve disease effect on moral and features? In features outcome, one of the most important intrauterine growth retardation is the most okay. After we interfere, the patient is still a small kilogram only, and high risk of premature birth. Yes. And how about the maternal risk in congestive failure increase and 3 years, maybe atrial fibrillation or supraventricular tachycardia. One of the nightmares is the pulmonary edema in the pregnancies, and the last is thromboembolism. And how about the pregnancies affects all valve and prosthesis? In stenotic valve, due to increased cardiac output, So led to increase the transvalvular gradient and increase also pulmonary artery pressures. Increased heart rate lead to poorly tolerated condition in many cases. For a nature wall, tissue walls may be due to high and increased metabolism, so degeneration faster, and mechanical valves thrombosis easier than the hypercoagulation state. And how about the risk for motor and features? We can see here they classify many kinds of this, but in the stenosis is a high risk of this group. And according to classifications of Coulson, in microstenosis or aortic stenosis in the class 4 is a high risk of pregnancy. In pregnancy for motor and for fetus. Another guideline from ESCs for the management, they focus on is in the microstenosis or in the coronary bypass in elective or surgery. There's many kinds of this, but this guys is 1Cs and 2Bs. In recommendations of association, American Heart Association, they focus mainly in the stenosis and indication for valvular scopulostomy percutaneous PTMC or patient with severe regurgitation should be monitored in tertiary care with the detector of gene cardiologist, surgeon, anesthesiologist, and obstetricians with expertise in managing high-risk cardiac patient. So in the high-risk, they have two things. First, we have to get in multidiscipline or in-house team with 5 persons like anesthesiologist, like surgeon, like obstetrician, like and so on. In summary, management during pregnancy, almost no cases we can medical treatment, but in such case, when the patient not tolerated, we have to intervene. So percutaneous PTMC or surgical intervention sometimes because. In our institution, here is some data. In total, we have more than 130 cases. We can medical treatment only. So only 75 cases we intervene by surgical, and 45 cases we do the PTMCs. In surgical, closed microvalvulotomies in 13 cases. 25 cases we can repair, and in 28 cases we have to replace the valve. Here is some picture. When we do surgery, we have to monitor of the fetal heart beat and uterus contractions. We isolate it before operation, and we continuous to here is the machine. You can see here is the heartbeat of fetus and the contraction of the uterus, and we continuous to monitor the fetal heart and contraction of uterus, even in the ICU and even in the wards. So some patient demographies from in group closed microvalvulotomy, the mean stay of more around 30s, and mean of fetus the 23 weeks of gestation, and in group repair or replace is the same. So the first time is around 50%, and urgent operation in closed mitral valvotomy is lower, just only 36%, but in repair and replace is 56%. Decrease pathologies, microstenosis is almost in all cases. Mitral regurgitation is the signature. You can see in the lower, yes, the mean systolic pulmonary artery pressure before the operation is very high. Both both in closed mitral valvotomy or in repair replace is the one of two indications for surgeries. How about outcome? PTMC, we do 45 cases. Just Dr. Hoi mentioned before. Just before, just only 0.6, and after before, and after 1.5 centimeters squares, pulmonary artery pressure down to 70 to 50, and the mean of MR is not equal. 3 case complication, 2 case after relation with the mitral regurgitation important. We transfer for mitral replacement, and 1 case abortion, no death. And how about closed mitral valvotomy? We do just only 13 cases, and we stop this since 2005. So in this case, complication in 3 cases, 2 failed. Fortunately, 2 cases we transfer, and we can mitroplasty, and for fetal 1 abortion, no death. For the group of mitral valvoplasty, 25 cases, just only it's okay. Just only 1 case abortions after a few hours when after we stopped the CVB, and no death at all. In summary, in surgical data, in repair, 25 case with comnisotomy, 15 with we push the ring, 10 cases, plus the tricuspid repair, 8 cases, and all the techniques in 14. For replace mechanical valve in 25 cases, and tissue valve in 9 cases. In complication, in total complication, we do 75 cases, just only 1 case operative death. In we have to cesarean delivery in 4 cases, and abortion in 3 cases, and threat of abortion is higher 8 cases, and preterm delivery was. To compare with another study, you can see here number of cases, and the maternal death or fetal death is very high when we do the open heart surgery under CPV, maybe 8.6% for maternals, but fetals is very chance, maybe low, like altitude, but very high, 26 or 18%. So what about post-operative care? For this patient or high conditions like this, we continue monitor fetal heart and uterine contractions, and we have to push the thrust anti-uterus contraction for 2 purposes. First, prevention, and the second is treatment, like magnesium sulfate, salbutamol, intravenous, etc. One thing have to try body extubation as soon as possible. All the case as usual. So back to indication of intervention during pregnancy. Almost case we can medical treatment, but in such case we have to do interventions. So 2 indications only: such The first is refractory to medical therapies and remain in the class 3 or 4. So in this case, we can do PTMC or microvascular surgery, PVAV or aortic valve surgery. The second indication is pulmonary artery hypertension in the first or second trimester of pregnancy. So in summary, I summarize on the flow chart like this. For mitral stenosis, if the patient suitable for PTMC or closed mitral valvotomy, it means patient with high risk of open heart surgery or patient with suitable valve morphology, includes no calcify, no thrombus, score within lower than 8 points. We can do all PTMC or closed mitral valvotomy. If not, we can change in the mitral repair or mitral replace. If in such case, patient in a situation will have to replace. If patient one have another choice, we change by tissue valve. Or the change we can mechanical valve. For mitral regurgitation or mix, we have only choice or repairable is better or unrepairable, we replace the valve. In the flowchart, aortic in a limit complex because in some case we can for high pressure we can do repairable for aortic surgery. For example, for the operation when as per available orals is very high risk for patient because last long CPV. In conclusion, the indication of surgical intervention in the woman with pregnancies with bipolar heart disease should be based on systolic pulmonary artery pressures, conditions of congestive heart disease, and gestational age. When we can interfere, we can operation the best option in the second trimester of pregnancies. And how we can do for mitral stenosis, for example, we can do PTMC when suitable or closed mitral valvotomy. Otherwise, we repair or replace. One thing, when we repair or replace, we have to support by TE and monitor fetal health and uterus closely. The last, it should be coordinated. For specialists to care one mother and one fetus is cardiologist first, the surgeon, the intensivist, and obstetricians. Thank you.
This is bleeding scar, and if the patient has the just fast scar 0 or 1 point, we normally we don't give the patient anticoagulation. For 0 point, we don't give anticoagulation. For 1 point, maybe we give the patient antiplatelet drug. For example, clopidogrel or aspirin. And aspirin for the patient the transfers more than 2 point, we should give the anticoagulation. And therefore, we return to the patient with the when we choose the valve, mechanical valve or tissue valve, with the patient under 65 years old, and we can count the transfers and ask them if the transfers very low, they have not the concomitant disease. I think that we can choose the tissue valve.
I would like to ask you a question. Since the result of the percutaneous mitral dilation is so good, and the bad result or the contraindication is for late indications when you have severe calcification or bilateral calcification or severe disruption of the subvalvular apparatus, why don't we do this balloon dilation at an earlier stage? we reduce the threshold for balloon dilation?
Normally when the patient came to us, the patient when we look at the patient, normally it is in late stage, and we should do the esophageal echocardiogram to count the Wilkins score. For the patient, for Wilkins score, is first is motion of leaflet and the calcification of the leaflet and the subapparatus calcification. For the contraindication, when the patient had the very calcified bicommissural, normally we refuse to do BTMC because when we do the BTMC, the patient we can rupture we can tear the leaflet, and the patient return from the mitral valve stenosis to the severe mitral valve regurgitation. And for the patient with the subvalvular apparatus very poor condition, more than 3 points, normally the result is not very good because the subapparatus of the mitral valves play very important in the movement of the valve, and therefore the predictor of the result depend on the subvalvular apparatus. And you ask why don't we dilate the patient in the early stage? Early stage, the patient don't come to us. When we see the patient with the right indication, the mitral valve, the square area less than 1.5 square centimeter, normally, and the high pulmonary artery pressure, we will do BTMC. But the early stage, the patient still at home.
Can I make a comment and then ask a question? The comment I want to make is that mitral stenosis, early pregnancy, the best operation in my opinion is closed mitral valvotomy. Within 1 hour, even when the patient comes in pulmonary edema, we can get them off quite easily. You don't have to do a perfect operation. You have a valve orifice of 0.5, you make it 1.2, the patient will get through his pregnancy. That's the comment I want to make. The question I want to ask is, if you have a pregnant patient, first or just beginning the second trimester, and during the antenatal visit, a diagnosis of aortic regurgitation is made with a dilated aorta of 4 centimeters. Would you advise abortion or would you advise aortic surgery? And if you advise aortic surgery, what surgery would you do? With Marfan syndrome, I'm talking about.
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to ask Dr. Kun, when you have a pregnant woman and you do the microsurgery, I agree with you. If this is usually in my hospital, General Hospital, usually we do a PTSC for the MS pregnant woman.
But if it is first trimester, are you worried about radiation effect on the fetus?
For the patient with MS, during usually the patient comes to us at the 3rd trimester. At the end of the 2nd trimester to the 3rd trimester. In that case, that the baby is not well enough to do the cesarean operation. In that case, we usually do PTNC, and nearly over 95% we successful. But in your presentation, you do some operation in micro surgery with a pregnant woman. So I'd like to ask, how is the temperature you do during the operation? First, and the second, for the aortic regurgitation, in our experience, we have 4 patients at the third trimester come to us at the first trimester with acute type A dissection. In that case, we estimate the baby for about 24 hours, and we do some steroid therapy for the patient, for the baby to grow enough. It means that the surfactant of the thyroid is good, we prepare that. And after that, we stop. It means that we do the cesarean operation, and we do the type A dissection right away after the cesarean. In 3 cases, we do 4 cases when all is successful. In that case, we do 3 painful procedures with the act operation at the same time, and 1 we do the heavy act and thyroid levy reserve the valve. So in the literature, there's the literature that if the patient came to us with the valve supply is 4 centimeters in diameter and the age, yes, 4 centimeters up, and the gestation is at the second trimester. So in second trimester, usually. First, even though in the first semester, in the literature said that the patient can wait to the second trimester, and in that case, we will do the operation with the thyroid levy reserve with the baseline is 4 centimeters and severe AR, and they keep the gestation until when the baby is old enough that we will stop by cesarean. And this was said that in the literature they are successful for some old case like from Australia and from America as well.
Excuse me, I would like to have a question to Dr. Hong, please. It's regarding the PPMC, and the Wilson score is about 8, and the patient refused the surgery. In that case, when should we call a stop to the PPMC procedure?
In some cases, when the patient had their Wilson score more than 8, and the patient refused to do to be done surgery, we do the PPMC. We're very careful. Normally, for example, the patient we choose the balloon. The choosing balloon depends on the head of the patient. For example, the patient 1.6 diameter, we choose the 26 mm balloon, and we start with the 22 mm. And for the patient low Wilson score, we go up each time 1 mm diameter of balloon. With the Wilson score, high Wilson score, we go up only 0.5 mm. And we carefully to do echocardiogram after each PPMC. And if the only one commissure open and the area more than 1.5 centimeters square, we stop the procedure.
Yeah, and I have some comment here. So indication for PTMC or closed capsulotomy almost the same. Right. And so in this room, I can say that Dr. Flung and we started this surgery, the closed capsulotomy, and who teaches us? Professor Carpentier, Professor Delos, 1992, 1993. We did more than 100 cases with this, and I can say that it's very stressful for the surgeon when you do that. I don't know how many of you already here do, dilatation by, by the finger, by the instrument, okay, we feel, not very security, not very safety for the patient and for the surgeon too. So that Dr. Jung showed, a series of more than 100 cases, but most of them we did just from 1992 to 1995. When we didn't have PPMC that time. But when PPMC arrived, We almost give up. We almost give up. It's not because we can't do that. It's not because the results not good. You see the result of PTMC almost the same, even with the close to hysterectomy. But I think PTMC is less invasive than the close to hysterectomy. Close to hysterectomy, you need open the patient, open the chest, open loose, something like that. We have a higher stress to the mother and especially to the children. So, and what is the best timing for surgery or PTMC? I do agree with Dr. Han that should be the second semester of pregnancy, because at this moment the fetus is the best stable than the first semester or at the third semester. So that of course, I do agree with you. Close to hysterectomy is very good operation, and not many people do that. Not many people, continue with that. And now, if ask myself, can I do that? Yes, I can. But between open surgery and close to hysterectomy, maybe I choose open hysterectomy.
It's wrong. It's wrong. I have just on back to the questions of the shows. First, this matter, right? Patient women with average revision maximum for bipolar and dilatation. My principle is the line of order is priorities. So we evaluate the conditions of patient. If stable, we can treat, or we can treat to stable. We are waiting. If not, abortion. I think so. Because if more still assist, baby can assist. It's my principle. Just only so the model is priorities. The lives of model is priorities.
I asked that question. I'll make a comment before we close. I think I'm going. I asked that question because with the Marfan syndrome and pregnancy, the dilatation is going to get worse during the last 2 trimesters, and you made the diagnosis during the first trimester. Go ahead and do the abortion, and then deal with the mother's condition. I actually had a family where there were 4 children. All of them had Marfan syndrome, and 2 of them died from dissection. 1 of them died during pregnancy. She wanted the pregnancy, and she went ahead and she died. Both the fetus and the mother died. And those are just analogy, but they are things we have to think about when we have a patient. Can I close for this and leave my friend to make the closing remarks? Thank you very much for all of you.
See you tomorrow.